Why would 3 HOA officers sneak into my yard at dawn to cut my fence, only to end up running for their lives from a 2,000-pound bison? Let me tell you, it's not just a story about a runaway animal, it's about a neighborhood war, a hidden conspiracy, and a woman who decided to fight back with everything she had. My name's Emma, and this is how my bison, Thunder, turned our cookie-cutter suburb into a battleground. It all started on a quiet morning when I was driving back from a sunrise photo shoot, my camera still warm from snapping herons by the marsh. I hadn't even finished my coffee when I saw birds scattering from my yard like they'd seen a ghost. Then I spotted them, 3 HOA officers: Greg, the smug president, Linda, his clipboard-wielding sidekick, and poor Tim, sweating through his khakis hacking at my fence with bolt cutters. My first thought wasn't anger. It was pure disbelief. Who in their right mind cuts into a bison enclosure without checking what's on the other side? Apparently, Greg thought my fence was 2 inches too tall and an eyesore that tanked property values. His words, not mine. He stood there in his peach polo, hand on hip, like he was the king of beige. Linda nodded like she was judging a bake sale, and Tim just looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Emma, we sent you a notice last week," Greg said, flashing a smile so fake I wanted to chuck my lens cap at him. "I was out of state shooting mountain lions," I shot back, stepping out of my truck. "This is trespassing and vandalism," Linda piped up, all chirpy. "It's enforcement of community standards. Bylaw 3.1.2 bans exotic animals, including your cow." "He's a bison," I growled. "Thunder's my emotional support animal, fully documented," Tim mumbled. "Does that count when he weighs more than my car?" I should have called the cops right then, filed a report, and lawyered up. But before I could, Thunder sensed freedom through the hole they'd cut and strolled out like a shaggy landslide with hooves. Greg's face went white. Linda stumbled back. Tim squeaked. "Don't move," I said, calm as I could manage. "Is he charging?" Linda shrieked. "No, he's grazing. Chill." But chill wasn't in their dictionary. Greg made the first mistake. He bolted. Thunder, thinking it was a game, snorted happily and took off after him. Tim screamed and ran too. Linda dropped her clipboard like it was on fire and sprinted. What followed was 2 minutes of pure suburban chaos. Thunder galloped past the koi pond, nearly flattened an inflatable unicorn, and tore through Mrs. Larson's rose garden. The HOA trio ran like cartoon bad guys, shrieking until they hit Tranquil Pines Lake and splashed in, chest deep, soaked, and humiliated. Thunder skidded to a stop at the water's edge, huffed, and wandered off to munch sunflowers, his tail flicking like he just aced a workout. I stood there, stunned, as my neighbor Mike, a dad with a drone obsession, hovered his camera overhead, laughing so hard I thought he'd keel over. "Emma, your bison's gonna be a meme by lunch," he yelled. He wasn't wrong. The VY Deo went VY Ral before I could lure Thunder back with a bucket of apples. Greg, Linda, and Tim waded out, seething, avoiding eye contact. Linda slipped in the mud and splashed back into the lake with a yelp, which didn't help their dignity. That night, I got a cease and desist email from Greg, demanding I remove Thunder, replace the fence, and pay $900 in fines. They called him a public safety hazard. Something snapped and meant it just because they'd cut my fence, but because they'd crossed a line. That fence wasn't just wood, it was my boundary, my piece, and they'd torn it down. So I got to work. I set up trail cams aimed at the HOA clubhouse and dug into my late Aunt Clara's old HOA email account. She'd left me this house and her login. I found board meeting transcripts that didn't add up, rerouted funds, shady expenses, and voting records that looked doctored. Tranquil Pines wasn't as tranquil as it seemed. The next morning, an orange violation notice was taped to my door, $304 304. Unauthorized livestock. Then came daily fines, $50 for a lawn 2 inches too long, $75 for a flamingo float that wasn't even mine. It felt like a war of attrition, not rule enforcement. I tried reasoning, mailed Greg, called Linda, offered to move Thunder's shelter, but they didn't want compromise. They wanted me broken. Then I found it, a hidden camera in my hedge pointed at my yard. I traced its wire to an alley and realized I wasn't just being fined, I was being watched. Furious, I called Ethan. The teenage tech was down the street. For $50 and some Pop-Tarts, he hacked the camera's feed in 20 minutes. It wasn't just me. 8 cameras spied on the neighborhood, 2 labeled Emma front and Emma back. I laughed, not because it was funny, but to keep from screaming. Ethan recorded everything, and I started playing their game. I measured my grass, painted my mailbox regulation beige, and placed a wind spinner exactly 6 feet from the curb, per the bylaws. At HOA meetings, I sat front row, asking pointed questions about their budget. Greg hated it. Lyndon nearly chewed through her pen. Clara had been a founding HOA member, back when it was a co-op, not a khaki dictatorship. In her files, I found buried bylaws requiring transparency and open voting records. Ethan and I built an archive of screenshots, clips, and budget discrepancies, like Greg billing July 804, emergency landscaping, after Thunder allegedly wrecked a gnome that never existed. I threw a neighborhood barbecue to rally allies, with ribs, a bouncy castle, and a sign on Thunder. Emotional support animal. Do not chase. People came, laughed, and loved Thunder, who let kids stick stickers on his horns. The HOA showed up, ready to pounce, but froze when they saw the crowd. Linda tripped and dropped her phone in potato salad, a cosmic win. Then came the rainstorm. Thunder, a digger in wet weather, unearthed a rusted box under an oak. Inside was Clara's ledger, packed with notes on every fine, vote, and shady deal she'd questioned. One page, underlined, read, "Override clause, emergency homeowner veto." It allowed a homeowner to suspend HOA actions if the board violated transparency, adopted in 2009 but never filed. With Ethan's decrypted HOA server data showing inflated costs and secret cameras, I had enough for a reckoning. The quarterly HOA meeting was my stage. I called in every neighbor, brought donuts, and had Ethan set up a projector. Greg droned through the budget, Linda pitched mailbox flag colors, and Tim sipped something strong. During open comments, I stood. "I have receipts," I said, showing fake reimbursements and unplanted trees. I played Greg's video saying, "Fine her until she cracks." Gasps. Silence. I read Clara's override clause, presenting the signed original. Linda tried to interrupt, but Tim, of all people, stood. "There's more," he stammered. "Greg told me to stay quiet. The cameras weren't just on Emma. We planted 3 more." Linda lunged at him, but he backed away. The room erupted. Someone threw a donut at Linda. Greg yelled, "I built this community." I leaned in. "No, you built a racket. We're tearing it down." The crowd cheered. A petition to oust Greg and Linda circulated. I signed it twice. Thunder got a community mascot badge. But the next morning, an envelope slid under my door. No name, just one line. "You think this is over? You don't know what she did." My stomach sank. This wasn't about Thunder or fines, it was about Clara. At the county clerk's office, I found a 2007 case where the HOA accused Clara of garden encroachment. It vanished from the docket, and the board president, Walter Vance, resigned abruptly. Clara's ledger noted, "WV knew too much. Protect the clause." At the annual HOA election, I brought everything: documents, a speech, and a reporter. Walter appeared, revealing Clara stopped the HOA from selling her land to a developer. Greg was ousted, the board dissolved, and I declined to run for president. I just wanted peace. Clara's fight wasn't a crime, it was courage. She'd saved our neighborhood, and I finished her work. Sitting with Thunder, watching kids bike by, I felt peace earned. "Next time," I told him, "we're getting catapults." He grunted, flopped on the grass, and I knew we'd won for now.